Welcome to Country Fried Rock, where we have conversations with songwriters for real music lovers who enjoy context and musical connection. We are Country Fried Rock. This week on Country Fried Rock, I'm talking with Dom Flemons, formerly of the Carolina Chocolate Drops. Flemons' recent solo album, Prospect Hill, will be available on Music Maker Records. I'm your host, Sloan Spencer. Dom Flemons and I talk about the music he likes to listen to, including early R&B and doo-wop. Prospect Hill includes his take on some traditional American music, as well as a few originals, with a variety of backing bands. It's my pleasure to talk with Dom Flemons. My guest today on Country Fried Rock is Dom Flemons, a wonderful multi-instrumentalist and absolutely fascinating person who I've been wanting to speak with for a long time. Welcome.
Oh, glad to be here.
So I'm not sure that all of our listeners are aware. I had the wonderful opportunity of driving you around Nashville one day, and we ended up talking about a foundation supporting blues musicians with whom you work. Tell me about that great organization, Music Maker Relief.
Music Maker Relief Foundation is a nonprofit organization that helps out traditional Southern artists. There are a lot of blues artists, a few old-time artists, and it's really based on the idea that many of the performers that aren't what they call the cream of the crop, or the people that make it through into the popular mainstream or even in the folk and blues field, they generally are, at best, they're in decent living conditions, but at worst, they're in poverty levels that most of us have no idea about. And so the Music Maker is really based on the idea of trying to help relieve some of the stresses of life that come to some of these musicians, especially as older people. It's in a variety of ways. Of sometimes some musicians, they might receive a check for enough money so that they can heat their trailer for the winter season. And other times it's people donate instruments, and so they'll pass instruments to them. There are several different varieties, and also another faction of it, which is not fully related into the foundation part, is kind of the next generation program, which are younger artists who are interested in learning more about the music by working with these older musicians and then taking that music out to the bigger world. And so we launched our first next generation artist, Layla McCalla, earlier this year. And so she's been our first successful next generation artist to get out there in the world. And so we've all been very proud to do that. You know, and she went through with the Carolina Chocolate Drops for several years, and then she's now playing on her own. And so, so there's a lot of different stuff we got going on at Music Maker. A great joy to work with them. I worked with them since 2006.
Your last couple of solo records were put out by them as well, is that right?
Yeah, since the beginning, I've wanted to put out my own solo records at the same time as the Carolina Chocolate Drops, just because I got a different repertoire of material and a different approach to stuff when I'm on my own compared to the group. Put out two different records. One was in 2007, and then one was in 2009. And so this is going to be my third one, and we're going to put it out through Music Maker again. I'll be featuring a full band on several pieces, and then there will be stuff that's more duo, but different ways of emphasizing what I feel already. I got a trio that I'm going to be taking around with me this year. I have a fiddler and a second guitar player, so they're featured a little bit on there. A lot of the record will be featuring duets between Guy Davis and myself, and then I have a whole other set of stuff of, actually a full-on group with a basic drum set, bass, and second guitar, and saxophone.
You kind of hinted at the instrumentation in different repertoire of music. The day that I got to meet you, you were actually doing a demonstration on playing the bones.
That's correct. The bones they've been a very influential instrument to me on many levels. I was given a set when I first moved out to North Carolina by someone who was just kind enough to, they heard me play and they knew that I could play the bones. And so this lady showed me how to play them, and that's how it started from there.
And you have a lot of other atypical instrumentation as well. Where does that lead for you?
It's been kind of a strange sort of journey as I've gone along. To see, when I first started playing it, I was interested in these old styles of music, and I just wanted to get them out there in any way that I could. And then as time has gone on, some of the players that I learned from have passed on, and so now I find I'm in a position where I need to be the person who's the expert on it. There's just the student of the expert. In particular, like the bones, there are a lot of bones players, so it's not really, that one's not in any danger of falling out of favor forever. There's the quills, which are a panpipe instrument that I play, that I actually learned from a fellow by the name of Mike Seeger. Once Mike passed away, I'm the only American close player that's left.
So it's like a panpipe, so several of them together?
That's right. 9 different notes, and it's in a pentatonic scale.
Mm-hmm. I'm Sloan Spencer. This is Country Fried Rock. Find us on iTunes, Spreaker, Podfeed, Player FM, Blueberry, Stitcher, Gigadial, Digital Podcast, and some great apps including Agogo and Swell in both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. Wherever you listen, you'll find Country Fried Rock. Never miss an episode. Pick up your limited edition Country Fried Rock merchandise at Ignition Music Garage in Goshen, Indiana.
Hey, this is Dom Flemons, American songster, and this is Country Fried Rock.
Are you formally trained in music and music theory as well?
No, not in music theory. I played drums when I was coming up in school, like from 5th grade all the way through high school. Every different type of drum that's featured in the concert band. So everything from snare drum to suspended cymbal, timpani, marching bass drum. I did all these different types of drums. And when I was about 16, I started playing guitar. And so I started with guitar, moved on to banjo, and just started picking up instruments as I went along.
The percussion and kind of rhythm behind that, I can see in just the few times I've gotten the opportunity to see you play.
Oh, definitely. When I first started going out and playing, I found that was a unique thing. Not as many people that I saw in the old-time field were as interested in just the rhythmic aspects compared to the melodic aspects of the music. So I found that I had a very different perspective on a couple of things. And then also I come at it from not just playing old-time music, but I also am a big fan of rock and roll, like 50s rock and roll and 40s R&B. And also a fan of Old Crow Medicine Show. You know, it's like I think about all the things that have happened since the 1920s and 30s, and I try to incorporate what I've learned from hearing those old recordings, stuff that came afterward, and then also the field recordings that were recorded by the various folklorists from the 30s to now. And so even field recordings give you a different perspective than just the commercial recordings that were made on 78. So I try to incorporate all those things. And then when I work with Music Maker, there are several artists, one in particular, Boo Hanks, that I've worked with a whole bunch. I've learned quite a bit from them by just hanging around. So I try to incorporate those things as well as someone that's spent time down south and trying to do my interpretation of the music that I heard from the people.
But you're not originally a Southerner. You're from out west somewhere?
I'm from Phoenix, Arizona originally.
Where I will admit I know absolutely nothing about the music heritage of that part of the country.
Oh, it's pretty spread out. I wouldn't say that there's like a strong heritage like there is in the state of North Carolina or any of the places down south. There's some really wonderful music that I found there. Even on the new record, I have a string band tune that's from Arizona.
When I first learned about you, it was actually from a friend of mine who is a poet. He was real into like slam poetry, and he was the first person who mentioned you to me.
Yeah, I used to do slam poetry quite a bit when I was still in college.
When you're talking about rhythm, that's actually what I was thinking about. If you've ever been to a slam poetry performance, the rhythm to it is a huge part of it.
Oh, definitely. That's a part that was very prevalent in my playing as I went along. Because, you know, there was a time when I was playing music, and then I did slam poetry for a few years. I just put the guitar down completely. And so I learned how to perform without an instrument, because it's the thing that people tend to have is they tend to hide behind their instruments, you know. They learned to break that when I started performing for the slam. I went to 2 different national poetry slams in Minnesota and Chicago in 2002 and 2003. So I competed the best I could for a while.
I'm Sloan Spencer. This is Country Fried Rock. Country Fried Rock is helping prevent musician suicide. For the last 2 years, our official charity has been Nucci's Space, a nonprofit organization removing barriers to mental health care for the music community of Athens, Georgia. This model program addresses everything from the need for affordable rehearsal space to loaner gear, as well as direct mental health services and primary care for musicians. We've got a ton of ways you can help them out at countryfriedrock.bandcamp.com. 2 incredible album compilations, baby onesies. Check it all out. Get some great music for yourself or for a friend and make a difference.
Hello, folks. This is Dom Flemons, the American songster. And if you're looking to buy any of my merchandise, you can find it either on my website, www.domflemons.com. That's DOMFLEMONS. Or you can go onto the Music Maker Relief Foundation website, which is musicmaker.org.
I didn't realize that those things were one after the other and then back to music again.
Before I did slam poetry, I was really into folk music, 60s rock. I wasn't doing the 20s and 30s stuff until actually after I did slam poetry. And that's when I came across like Yazoo Records and some of the reissue labels that featured music from the 20s and 30s. So then I started applying what I knew from, the 60s is very broad in the way that, they discovered a lot of the performers from 20s and 30s as well. There being new performers came out that were older and younger. And so it was one of those things where I had a broad base of what folk music was from the 60s revival, and I could apply that to a lot of what I was listening to interpreting the 78 recording. Then when I moved out to North Carolina, maybe about a few years later, I was able to really spend some time with people who lived out there and lived the life and understood how. Usually people say, like, well, you can copy a style, but then you got to have your own style. That's what people generally say. But that can be very broad and very hard to figure out for an individual. But once I started living down south, I started understanding how to create my own style in the way that most of the time these performers, they have an eccentric sort of thing to them. That's usually because they're eccentric like that walking down the street. They're like a character when they're walking down the street. It's not just something they do when they're on stage all the time, per se. That's something that I try to apply into my own work, is try to figure out what's my style so that when I get on stage, I don't have any major hang-ups about, who am I on stage? I just try my best to find a middle ground so that when people come up to me, they're not completely caught off guard that, I don't have like a British accent or something.
You mentioned something that I guess I'm surprised by, and that is your interest in 40s R&B and 50s rock and roll. I understand that going back to the 20s and 30s and particularly the Southern aspect of, being who you are and making it your own. Where does all of that come in for you with your own work?
With me, another thing that I've tried to be very conscious of is making sure that when I'm putting stuff out there, it's stuff that works with all the other material I've put together. I'm now starting to pull out different songs that I've written just over maybe the past 5 years. Like I used to write all of my songs, but then I got really bored with that, so then I stopped. And then I just got into performing in different styles. Now I'm pulling out songs that are ones that I think would fit in my own style of performing. So that's something that's going to be like, I'll feature them in my shows as I'm going, and then also in my new album I'll have several of them as well. But yeah, like 40s R&B and 50s rock and roll. Like I grew up in the era when oldie stations were really prevalent. Mm-hmm. So I grew up with a lot of doo-wop and a lot of 50s rock and roll. Being in Arizona, that's getting toward where the border towns are, where a lot of rock and rolls. That's kind of where rock and roll came up, and that's where a lot of that stuff still gets played on the radio. So I'm doing that, and then also with the 20s and 30s stuff. It's one generation after the 20s and 30s. So there are links and there are things that reach over. Even Alan Lomax, he did a concert in 1959. It was like a whole folk song concert. He also felt that rock and roll was the perfect synthesis of the white and black music that he had seen in the 30s. People thought he was crazy when he invited the Cadillacs, song Speedo. They on top of like Gene Ritchie and I don't know if it was Roscoe Holcomb, but it's like Gene Ritchie and Roscoe Holcomb and those people. And then the end was with the Cadillacs.
Yep.
And people thought he was just nuts for doing it. But I think now in the 21st century, I think that people are a lot less hung up on the labels. And so in that way, there's a lot of freedom for a performer to be able to apply those things out there in the world, but I try to be conscious of that. I'm as hard-nosed as anybody in my audience might be. There's nothing worse than when an act is a great interpreter of songs and then all of a sudden they're like, well, I'm just going to write originals. And sometimes the act goes down, So I try to be very conscious of this when I'm writing songs and putting them out there, that hopefully they're as good as the other songs I pick. Strong material all around.
I'm Sloan Spencer. This is Country Fried Rock. You can find Country Fried Rock on great radio stations like 91.1 The Globe in Goshen, Indiana. Wildman Steve Radio Network from Auburn, Alabama, around the world. Online from Texas at Root Hog Radio, part of Radio Free Americana. From Mobile, Alabama on the Mod Mobilian Radio Network. Listen in Georgetown, California at KFOK 96.1. From Kodiak, Alaska on KMX WNXT, KSRQ, Grand Forks, Minnesota, KKRN, Round Mountain, California, KDRP, solar-powered radio from Dripping Springs, Texas, WALW, Moulton, Alabama, and other great stations like CJXF, Calgary, Canada, 89.1 The Lakeshore, and yourhometownradio.com.
Hello, folks. This is Don Flemons, the American songster, and I have a brand new album coming out, and it's going to be called Prospect Hill. I will be featuring different material from all over the United States, as well as a few original numbers in which I've written myself that fit in my style of playing. Hopefully you'll check it out.
Do you like to work those songs out with live audiences?
Well, yeah. Again, with me being a solo performer or having a small ensemble, I go over the songs. I figure out how they go. And then when you put them in front of an audience, then you can truly find out, oh, this is something that worked. This is something that didn't work.
One quick switching gears. I know that for Rhythm and Blooms in Knoxville, you'll be doing a rhythm workshop. What does that entail?
Well, it's a funny thing. I'm going to focus on the bones with it, but I always like to ask people, because to me, with keeping them so broad, I'd like to ask, what do you guys want? What sort of things with rhythm are you interested in? I mean, people have all sorts of answers. It's as varied as, I like your work with the chocolate drops, so I want to know something you did with them. Or sometimes it's, I want to learn the bones. Mm-hmm. Other times it's, whatever it might be. So I want to feel the people who come out to the workshop, what sort of stuff they're looking for. There's so much stuff, like having been out playing for the better part of a decade, there's a lot of stuff that I just do instead of thinking about, and sometimes that can be really good. Like I did a guitar workshop at a festival, and one of the main things I taught was Jimmy Rogers guitar, and so that's something that I don't generally tend to do that. I don't, but they asked about it, and it worked out really well to show them just those little sort of licks that are the foundation of Jimmy Rogers' style. Folk music and stuff, it's really, I try not to make it rocket science because it's, but you can do cool things that make it sound like rocket science to the people that are listening to you. And so, those are things that I try to do where it's like less work for the performer, but more payoff to the audience.
Do you get a chance to see anything new in terms of music?
I am more so now, as I've been playing solo, since I have a little more leeway. Because when you got a group, with us, it was like 5 people on the road, tour manager, 4 members. You just have to, as a lead person in that group, there's only so much I can just say, I'm just going to do this, unless it's something like really important. Because you have to herd everybody together, get everybody to the next gig. There's just a lot more involved. But when it's just me, all I need to do when I come off and on stage is pull my instruments out, take them off, walk off stage. So then I put them in the car. Then I can do whatever I want until I have to be somewhere next. All the choices are just mine. So in that way, it can be a little bit freer for me to hear new music. But I'm always keeping an eye out. It's modern music and old. I'm pretty strict about if I like it or not. It's like Janelle Monáe. I think she's one of the better singers and performers that's out there, and I would be shocked to find that a good deal of people couldn't at least find the musical value in what she's, granted. Her second album, don't like it as much as I don't like it as much as the first album. Again, I'm a persnickety sort of guy like that.
Right.
I'm always keeping an eye out, listening for something, hitting up the record stores and, seeing the revival of vinyl record, if it's a real thing or if it's just a fad. I'm enjoying that too. Being able to find more records as people are getting interested, I'm able to find the obscure ones for nice, cheap prices.
What are some of your prized finds?
Well, let's see. This one here, recently, I'm in Hoboken today, so I bought a record of a lady named Louis Delano playing music of her mentor, Joe Jordan, and Joe Jordan was a ragtime piano player. He was contemporary to, U.B. Blake. Listened to a lot of U.B. Blake, found some of his stuff. Greenbrier Boys record, a record of Ida Cox, Shirley Collins, Lead Women, the British Folk Revival, one called Women's Railroad Blues, which is a record of all women singing songs about railroads. The liner notes are just intense on this, too. It's like women sing about the blues and railroads, but men are the ones that jump on the railroads and go, while the women sit home and sing about them. And it's very intense liner notes about the kind of the gender roles that go with. There's a great line, which is, when a man gets the blues, he takes a train and rides, and when a woman gets the blues, she just sits at home and cries. The whole record kind of has a theme around that, which, again, that's the sort of stuff that I get into. that or books. I just picked up the new Johnny Cash, San Quentin. Not that new, but the expanded disc with the DVD on it. So I'm interested to support this excellent album again. It's all over the place with me. I know the things that I like, and I'm always up for hearing something new. And I think that's important, too, as I've been trying to put the word out to me. The 2014 I proclaimed as the year of the folk singer. And I feel like the idea of a folk singer, a solo performer, not specifically folk per se, but a person who's singing the songs and putting it out there, I feel like we need those more than ever before. That's something that I hope that people will start, stepping up to the task. Especially with Pete Seeger passing away, too.
Right.
There needs to be some more people pulling their weight.
Thank you so much for your time. Safe travels, and looking forward to saying hello this weekend.
All right, that's going to be wonderful. I'm excited to catch all the acts that are going to be down there this time around, too.
Yeah, it should be really nice. Take care. Thank you much.
All right. Bye-bye. Hello, folks. This is Don Flemons, the American Songster. I hope you'll tiptoe down to my website and learn some more information about where I'm going to be and the sort of activities I'm up to. And you can check that out at www.domflemons.com. And that's domflemons.com.
Country Fried Rock, music uncovered. This week's instrumental is Gilbert Takes the Wheel from Guadalcanal Diary and their album, Walking in the Shadow of the Big Man. You can subscribe to our weekly podcast on iTunes. Just search Country Fried Rock. Our Country Fried Rock stinger is from Steve Soto and the Twisted Hearts. Country Fried Rock is a partnership with the nonprofit Florence Regional Arts Alliance. Your donations to this program are tax-deductible to the extent you are eligible under U.S. law. Country Fried Rock radio programs are distributed to public radio through the Public Radio Exchange, prx.org. Copyright 2014 by Lilypad Productions. All rights reserved.
Ever he been helping us some country fried rock.